The Hubbard Company got its start in the early 1950s, not long after the graduation of Keith Hubbard from Defiance High School. Keith was the son of Lester Hubbard, owner and operator of the Defiance Dairy located on Perry Street. After attending the Aurora School of Photo Engraving together in Missouri, Keith and Lester returned to Defiance in the fall of 1951 with their newly acquired skill to found the Hubbard Company on 515 Fifth Street.
I'm Lou Simonis. I was the first employee at the Hubbard Company. Keith Hubbard was there at the time, and myself. And I had been interviewed by Keith's dad for a job because I'd been looking for a job as an artist in Defiance. I was about to graduate from high school, which I did in '52. When I was employed at the Hubbard Company the very first, all we basically did was make engravings. Engraving business principally was very small, and it was also a new business to us that were actually doing the work. And our education in it was, you might say, minimal, so most of it was on-the-job training. At that time, usual routine was we'd go to the Crescent News at 7:30 in the morning, pick up photographs they wanted to print that day, and then we had to bring them back and engrave them. That meant creating a negative on them that we could print on a metal plate and then put them into an acid bath to etch them down to make a printing plate, trim them down, pull proofs on them, take them down to Crescent News by 10:30 that morning. We ran into a lot of obstacles where you would see other people had printed or produced plates a certain way, and we had to do a lot of experimentation. That's where I always appreciated Keith and his dad both would let me have the time and the materials there to do a lot of experimental work. And then later on, in order to pick up more business, we went into a mailing business where we would actually address and prepare anything you wanted mailed. And anywhere like 1,000 pieces you needed mailed and addressed would take care of that.
I first started working at the Hubbard Company in about 1960. My brother was already working here as an engraver, and they needed someone to do cleaning, a little odd jobs, making some deliveries, just all-around person. So I came to work when I was a junior in high school, did the cleaning, and also I worked for a little bit for Louis Simonis, also my brother, and mainly for Charlie Barber, who ran the press down in the basement.
Charlie Barber had been a friend of Keith during school and was working, I believe, in the Defiance Machine Works, and Keith talked Charlie into coming in at that time.
I'll never forget, Charlie Barber had a way of really instilling work into people, and he would get you to work, but he always had nicknames for people. He always called me Little Richard from the Entertainer from years past.
We purchased a small press because our means were very limited, and we started printing like 8.5 by 11 by 17, I think was the maximum we could print. And quite frankly, we didn't know what the heck a printing plate for offset was, but we learned real quick. And some of the materials they furnished to us, at that time when we got into the printing, we had really no experience with them, and we actually were sold materials that were outdated. In other words, they did not work, and we didn't know any better because the chemistry just simply did not work until another salesman came in and said, hey, they gave you a rotten deal, so we had to start over to learn how to do these things. So then on 5th Street, so we were doing some printing and doing mailing business and engravings. We also sold cameras for a while, the Polaroid camera, and I believe the Exa and Exacta line of cameras we also had. I don't think we got into Leica cameras, but I think it seems like we had some at one time. So that was our principal business on 5th Street.
In 1961, the company began to outgrow the first shop on 5th Street, and as a result, purchased one of the oldest printing operations in town at the time, the Defiance Printing and Engraving Company. The business had been located on 500 Court Street from its inception in 1906, and it is here where the small Hubbard Company combined both the operations of the photo engraving shop on 5th Street with the much larger printing capabilities of the Printing and Engraving Company.
Printing and Engraving was coming up for sale after Keith's dad had died in 1960, and Keith was a little quandary what to do. Well, anyway, we were able to purchase the printing and engraving through stock. That way we didn't have to purchase the entire company at one time. It was a much larger operation, larger presses, larger room, more people, and the business went on from there.
It was quite a change. We always kept things very, very clean on the 5th Street address of the Hubbard Company. But when we moved to Court Street, everything had changed. It was very, very in the need of very much cleaning. So it gave me a full-time job if I wanted it. And also all the ceilings needed to be painted, and it was just needed a whole huge uplift, which Mr. Hubbard ended up doing.
My first experience with Hubbard Company was on Court Street. It was quite different than today's environment because there was no air conditioning and it was kind of an open concept.
I never will forget when the Hubbard Company moved from the 5th Street to Court Street. They had to literally take the machinery through the floor because it was in the basement. And the hand feed presses were very heavy at that time. And the press was so heavy that the cable just about broke. And they finally got it through the hole in the floor and got it out of there without anyone getting hurt. And they had 2 offset presses down there also that had to be taken out of the basement and delivered to Court Street. That made a big improvement in the printing that was done in Court Street because Court Street had all letterpress printing, and that introduced a whole new ball game to the company because it was faster, cleaner, and neater printing. It was wonderful, though, to get offset introduced to the printing company because it helped the company, enabled the company to grow faster and to keep up with time, and which you had to do.
We were faced with an enormous problem of how we're going to fit in our production on 5th Street with the printing and engraving production on Court Street. So we had to make the physical move, and all the time during this period maintaining production schedules for our customers. And the most difficult part for me was that in the preparation of printing plates and plates for the offset presses as well as the letterpress, which is the old-time engraving type and movable type, we had to at one point do things such as we had our camera to photograph the things we need to reproduce on Court Street. We had the developing of the negatives on 5th Street, so I would have to expose the film Court Street, run to 5th Street, develop it up, and if we didn't have a good negative, I'd have to go back through the whole thing again. And during that period, I and many others were putting in like 70 hours a week during this transition period.
When I came back in March of 1970, basically there were 2 major businesses of the Hubbard Company, one being, of course, the printing department, and the other business was the school aid business.
The school end of it was quite a big thing because we shipped out lots of school supplies every day all over the United States. The room in the front of Hubbard's here extended way down to the theater, the Valentine Theater. Then it's about twice as big as it is now, and that was completely full of charts and helpful things that teachers used in those days, film strips and measuring things, anything that a school teacher would use, they had out here. And it was probably the largest school supply place. You'd probably have to go to Chicago to find a bigger one because the teachers would come in on a Saturday. Teachers would come from Fort Wayne, Toledo, Columbus, all over. They would come drive in here and spend the whole day. They would get here when the store opened in the morning, and you'd give them a cart, and they would just have a ball going around filling that cart up, and they'd all go out to eat for dinner and then come back in the afternoon and finish up their shopping like that. It was just a big day for them, and they were thrilled to get to some place that had the selection that Hubbard's had here.
Eventually, the school aid business was not that profitable, and eventually it was sold. We In the interim, we acquired an office supply business, which we started to build along with the school aid business until the school aid business was sold. And we acquired two office supply business, one being, the first one being the print shop, and then the next one being Metro Office Supplies.
One day I was printing in the old printing and engraving company down at on Court Street, and Keith walked up to us. Keith always walked around, talked to his help, and he came up to me one day and said, "Look what I've got in this box." And I said, "What do you got there?" And he says, "Teachers' lesson plans and grade books." He says, "I just bought them from a man that getting tired of printing them for people, and he says I'd like to get involved in it." And I said, "Well, that'd be great." I said, "How can you go wrong by printing for a school?"
A small part of the business at the time I came back was the lesson plan and class record book sales, better known as Award lesson plan and class record book, which we developed later by Mr. Keith Hubbard by going to national exhibits.
It involved me going to Milwaukee, Dallas, Detroit, Escanaba, Michigan. It was quite different than selling printing.
All of a sudden, that business turned completely our printing business around.
As the company grew, Keith bought bigger and faster machinery, and we were able to go from approximately 100,000 books a year to 400,000 books a year. And Keith had a dream that when he bought those books, that he dreamed of someday that would be a big job and give a lot of people work, which it did.
We used to shut down because we had very little work to do during the summertime. Well, after the plan book business evolved to such an extent, we could not shut down during the summertime. We had to keep open and keep putting books together. Matter of fact, we hired probably in the beginning maybe 4 to 6 college students from Defiance College or other students to put books together all during the summertime.
When I wasn't working on this, I was helping with lesson plan books. When we first came here, everything was hand counted, hand punched, hand gathered, and put together. And when they got the Apollo, that eliminated all that counting and speeded up the process completely.
It made it a lot easier for everybody concerned as far as running books, and it was so much faster. And I don't know, I don't remember what year we got this, but I suppose I run this 12, 15 years at least. So, but it was a great press, and it saved us a lot of time and effort to do the counting and punching.
I was on the roll-fed press then for 10 years. All I did was print school book papers, and that was printed in green ink. And once in a while, we would even be so rushed towards Labor Day that sometimes we worked on Sundays from 6 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon, 2 shifts. I mean, and it was quite a deal with people that they were using Ward lesson plan and grade record books all over the world. We sent books to, I know, the Philippine Islands and around the world, all over Germany, wherever there was a armed forces school and they were used to using them. That's where they were sent. It was a really big deal.
So it actually became a very major part of the business, and in the end made our printing business very profitable.
By 1967, after several years at the Court Street facility, it became apparent the company was in need of a way to accommodate its growing offset printing capabilities.
So we realized that we had to acquire another space. Well, the old Mack truck, I believe it was, facilities on Clinton Street was for sale. So Keith had me take every piece of machinery, everything we had in the shop, and I reduced it to little pieces of paper and scale and pasted up a whole floor plan for the new Hubbard company, so to speak. And I made sure that I had a drinking fountain next to where I was.
It was interesting working for the Hubbard Company because you got to do more than just print. You got involved in the company by helping them build things and repair it.
During the move from Court Street to Clinton Street, Paul Shannon and I were kind of a part-time designated remodelers. Demolition first, and then building the walls and paneling the upstairs where our offices would be. The building was formerly a car dealership, and the only thing that was upstairs was I think the parts and junk like that you need. And we had a good time doing that.
It took right off. He bought new equipment. This one here that I'm standing beside of was one of them. And then he bought a Heidelberg offset also. So he bought 3 of these at the same time. 2 letterpress and an offset that looked just like these. But the offset was much neater printing. You didn't have to punch the paper to get it to print. It laid the ink on the paper instead of punching it in, and it was much faster, much neater. And as we grew, Keith would buy new equipment to make things faster, to keep up with time.
One outstanding thing with Mr. Keith Hubbard was he was always looking forward to expanding the business. He was not afraid to put money, whether he had it or not, put money back into the business. He was always buying printing equipment, anything that would help production. He was right on top of it. He always stayed up with all the latest inventions